The protesters are angry.
New DA, new rules. 1 week into his new role, Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt explains which protesters he will prosecute, and maybe more importantly, which ones he won't. Mark down the date, please, because not only did the Oregon legislature pass bills during the second special session, but they did it quickly, though it wouldn't quite be a meeting in Salem without some drama.
I will adjourn this meeting. Stop it.
And I know that we're always worried about a PPE shortage, but I don't think this counts. It is keeping Wilsonville weird, though. Here's the story.
Whew, man, I'm having a day. I'm just having one of those days. You know what I mean? You're thinking to yourself, do I know what you mean? Yeah, it's been like a day after day after. I'm having one of those months. I'm having one of those back-to-back-to-back types of months. I think we all are. Just so you know, I think a lot of people see me stand up here every single night and think I'm unfazed by the seriousness of the topics that we delve into and try to discuss every night. I'm not. I'm just like you. I'm exactly like you at home. We're all the same. We're dealing with this the best we can, but I'm glad to be here with you tonight. I can't say that. And I think that's it's one of the best parts about this show. We're kind of a community. The people who watch us every night, the people that already know what I'm about to say next, which is how you can communicate with us. Those are the people that I love to hear from. Whether it's critiques, criticisms, advice on how we should do things, the coverage you want to see, keep that stuff coming, right? You can email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can find me on Facebook. Search Dan Haggerty KGW. I'm on Instagram too. Or you can use Twitter and that hashtag, Hey Dan. Let's get started. And tonight's big story is all about prosecution. Who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. Today, Multnomah County's new district attorney, Mike Schmidt, gave his first official press conference in the new role. He officially took office on August 1st, and he explained some changes when it comes to prosecuting the protesters who break the law. In short, protesters who only violate city ordinances, like a curfew violation, for example, or who don't deliberately damage property, don't steal, don't use force against another person, they probably won't get prosecuted.
This policy acknowledges that the factors that lead to the commission of criminal activity during a protest are incredibly complex. The protesters are angry, yes, deeply frustrated with what they perceive to be structural inequities in our basic social fabrics. And this frustration can escalate to levels that violate the law. Some of those violations are impermissible by any standard, resulting in physical violence, injury, and worse. Others represent the instinctive reactions of people who have been gassed repeatedly, who have been struck with kinetic projectile weapons, and who have seen other protesters arrested in ways that they deeply disapprove of.
This change in policy could mean hundreds of protesters could have criminal cases against them dropped entirely. But DA Schmidt says this isn't a real-life get-out-of-jail-free card or anything like that. There are still crimes that his office will prosecute. But there are also still a lot of questions about this new policy, like where will he draw the line? Does he see any way to resolve the nightly skirmishes that we are seeing night in and night out? I had a chance to talk to DA Schmidt and ask him some of these questions, and I'm sure you probably have as well.
I wasn't surprised at all when I heard what you had to say today, and I don't think that anybody who watches The Story, our show, should have been surprised either, because we've had you on several times having your opinions on a variety of things, including how to charge the people that we've seen involved in these protests. I didn't really hear much about solutions, though, when it comes to the downtown violence and the violence that we're now seeing in North Portland.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the solution is that we're going to focus our efforts in our research or in our resources. Those are the cases that we're going to take. We're going to work with PPB or the investigative agencies to get the evidence that we need to put those cases together. As you heard from the press conference today, we're talking about a total of somewhere around 550 cases combined. But the vast majority of those are those low-level misdemeanor cases that aren't causing damage, aren't causing harm. Yes, they were told to disperse and they didn't do that, so that is a crime. It's not that it's an unlawful arrest, but we're going to focus our efforts and our resources on the ones that are actually causing the damage and harm. So in some ways, it is a strategy to getting at those crimes and hopefully also a little bit of a de-escalation. We've seen every time that we've ramped up our criminal justice response, the protests expand. I hope this is a little bit of a de-escalation as well.
The chief said recently that we can't arrest our way out of this. Is there, which a lot of people looked at as kind of the easiest or the fastest option, to go in and just arrest everyone? Is there a fast option? What is the timeline for people? How should they begin to process what we're looking at here moving forward?
I applaud the chief. He and I had conversations, and I think he's exactly right. Like I said, every time we increase our show of force, we see that we get a equal and even more increased response. You see what the federal government did when they came in here and how that swelled the number of people in the protests. I don't think there is an easy solution. I don't think there's a fast and easy solution. We've tried arrests, over 550 people now, or at least 550 different cases referred to my office. And that's not worked. So I think the chief's right. We can't arrest our way out of this. We need to start talking and thinking about what are the things that we are going to change in our criminal justice system. And, I think we got to remember, we've been doing this for 76 days, but the issues in our criminal justice system that Black people are talking about, community members, people of color, have been here for decades. And so the idea that we could fix this overnight and get everybody off the streets is probably not realistic.
You mentioned 550 arrests. When we talk about the lesser charges, the ones that you are not going to prosecute, that's the majority of them. So that's like 400. So if it's no longer going to be charged to trespass, interfere with an officer, or run from an officer, what makes you believe that we won't just see more of that on a nightly basis?
Yeah, so, first of all, just for clarity for people who haven't read the policy, it's pursuant only to these protests. My policy doesn't extend to those types of crimes in any situation, in our community. So, but in the context of these protests, like I said, what we've seen every time we're making those arrests, Dan, you're a news guy. I'm on Twitter. People tweet me videos every single night. And I see these arrests happening. And what I see is when somebody is in the middle of the street talking to officers, and is saying, I'm not cursing at you. I want you to hear me. And they're ordered, get out of the street, and they don't do that. And then what ends up happening is that escalates to an arrest. It just seems that exacerbates the situation we're in. So, those are the cases that we're looking at. If somebody's throwing rocks at officers, if somebody's lighting things on fire, we're going to prosecute those cases. But these cases where really the conduct is somebody, trying to communicate and say what they're concerned about, and then they end up getting arrested for disobeying a lawful order, that doesn't further public safety to spend the resources to prosecute those cases.
There was a case recently, we saw a 77-year-old woman intervene in a protest and acted as a counter-protester. And she had paint dumped on her head and caution tape thrown on top of her. Under the new rules, would the people who did that have been charged with a crime?
Yes. Yeah, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to, what we're talking about is interfering with a peace officer, disorderly conduct, those types of charges where it's basically an officer says, hey, it's time for you to go home, and you don't. Or you need to get out of the street, and you don't. Those are lawful orders that the police officer can give. It is a crime. But this policy is saying we're not going to focus our resources there. If you are assaulting other people in the crowd, if you are dumping paint on their heads, if you are lighting things on fire, you're throwing rocks at people, those are the cases that we're going to prosecute. We're going to, like we would do for any prosecution, we get the evidence, we get witness statements, we get video evidence, and we'll put together a case.
Okay, so that's just a bit of what we were talking about. You're going to hear more from DA Schmidt throughout this week. We talked for a lot longer, to be honest with you, for about a half an hour or so. If you can't wait and you want to check it out now, you can see where on your screen. We're going to post the entire conversation on the KGW YouTube channel. While you're there, please hit that subscribe button. All right, let's talk about a specific incident, though, from when the protests were still centered downtown. This is a question coming from Dawn from Portland. Wanted to know, hey, Dan, any truth to the story that Portland protesters have burned Bibles? All right, thank you, Dawn, for writing that in. Dawn's referring to an incident that got picked up by a lot of conservative media outlets like the New York Post and the Federalist. After midnight on August 1st, someone took a video of someone burning Bibles and American flags. The video went instantly viral, as something like this would. People used it to call protesters godless and un-American. Even Republican politicians did jump in condemning that video. There is no denying what you're seeing in that video. You are seeing what you're seeing, but the narrative that was pushed surrounding it, that this was a widespread book burning wasn't really based in reality. And now we know that it might have been actually the first example of Russian disinformation in the 2020 election. We think that this New York Times article and its analysis, it goes into a lot more detail, is worth your time. The headline is "A Bible Burning, a Russian News Agency, and a Story Too Good to Check Out." The reporters describe what actually happened as a few protesters burning one, maybe two Bibles, and the hundreds of thousands of other protesters not even noticing really what was happening at the time. But the story got elevated on Russian news sites, misconstrued and inflated, and suddenly it got picked up by loads of American media, and a false narrative was created. The New York Times story gets into more fascinating detail, including how it could actually impact the 2020 election, some theories on that as well, and we think it is worth your time. So today was supposed to be the second day of the special session down in Salem, but they finished everything last night, if you can believe it. It only took lawmakers like 14 hours to pass everything. It was a lot more efficient than earlier this year when they couldn't reach a deal on cap and trade. Republicans walked out and they got virtually nothing done at all. So I assume this time around everyone just got along swimmingly, right?
We just got blasted by the governor for not passing 1702, and that the Republicans killed the bill, which obviously there's 2 Republicans out of 5 on the committee. So my conclusion is that the number of Republicans equal the IQ of the governor.
Oh, that wasn't nice. No. Come on, Senator, that was inappropriate.
Where are our priorities? Our priorities are for chickens and horses and not the safety of the public. That's what I'm complaining about. So now I can't even talk. I'm getting gavelled down.
Stand down. That we chose to fund.
All right.
Wait.
Stop it. All right.
Yes, it is.
Stop it. I will adjourn this meeting. Stop it.
Probably recognize the person behind the mask there. That was Peter Courtney doing the old "I'll turn this car around" act. Yeah, still a lot of tension between Democrats and Republicans, but things did get done. Let's not forget it. Let's take a look at what they did do. Lawmakers had a big challenge, of course, filling a $1 billion plus budget hole created by the pandemic. Income tax revenue is way down because so many people are out of work right now. They decided to cut $400 million across state agencies, doing a lot of things like not filling vacant jobs. They're also pulling money from rainy day funds, like $400 million from an education one, to make sure that schools still get the money that they need. Lawmakers also passed one police reform bill. It bans officers from using chokeholds except in self-defense. Remember, they already passed a bunch of police accountability bills during a special session last month. So some Republicans, though, voted against this chokehold ban because they said that they've already passed enough reforms at this point. Listen here.
So I'm going to be a no, not because I think this is a bad bill. I'm going to be a no to give a shot across the bow, simply saying that for now, and I repeat, for now, this is enough.
It is not the last bill. The bill for me is a very simple one. Yes, it's an emotional situation. I want to feel safe wherever I am in the state of Oregon, and I don't want to have to worry about the people who I expect to help me be safe to be anxious and to be creating more anxiety for me.
Senator Lou Frederick there. He's right about this not being the last police reform bill. Lawmakers are right now already working on even more for the future. So if you live in Portland, tonight is your last chance to do your civic duty until the presidential election in November. Ballots are due at 8 p.m. at an official drop box. The only Position on the ballot is to fill the empty seat on Portland City Council. We should know tonight whether Loretta Smith or Dan Ryan will be Portland's newest city commissioner. They are running to finish out the term of the late Nick Fish, who died in January after a battle with cancer. There are 2 years left on his term, so whoever wins will finish it out. Both candidates have spoken at length about how they would approach the protests, COVID-19, economic recovery, homelessness, really virtually every major issue facing the city, the state, the country, and the world right now. You can see my conversation with both of them and Laurel Porter's episode of Straight Talk featuring them on the KGW YouTube channel. But you better watch soon because ballots are due in less than 2 hours.
Yesterday, we learned humans care less and less as more people suffer. It's called psychic numbing. Next, we'll talk about how we can start to overcome it, as hundreds of people die every day from COVID-19. And a viewer wants to know how a religious gathering of thousands on Portland's waterfront was allowed to happen on Saturday. And some Wilsonville shoppers show us a good way to make sure people stay 6 feet away from you. When the story continues.
Hey, welcome back to The Story. Happy Election Day in Portland. Remember, ballots are due at 8 o'clock. Let us know if you voted using hashtag HeyDan. Brag about it. That's something to brag about. You can send us a comment as well. We love to chat with you. You can send those to thestory@kgw.com. And we want to get right to a question. This from Jediah Aker, who had a question about last weekend's religious gathering at Portland's waterfront. He asked, did the city of Portland give Sean Foyt permits to hold the event on the waterfront the other day? If you're a normal person and you didn't spend all weekend watching the news, you might have missed what happened Saturday night downtown. It's okay if you did. We love the news here at The Story. The worship leader named Sean Foyt held a big gathering at the waterfront dubbed Riots to Revival. There were hundreds of people, as you can see from the video, close quarters, not a lot of them wearing masks. As for your question, the one that got posed was, no, Portland Parks and Rec did not permit this gathering, nor did the organizers request a permit. So in that regard, it is officially an illegal gathering. It was also in violation of the governor's order capping worship gatherings at 50. Again, there were hundreds of people there and not very safe distancing. Multnomah County's health officials said that she was worried about the potential spread of COVID-19.
I do understand that people came from different parts of the region, that there was some reports of little masking. I don't know exactly. That is concerning to me. I will say that we have had assemblies of people on the waterfront for going on a couple months now. I think the most concerning reports I've heard of this particular event were that people were not necessarily maintaining the 6-foot distance, not masking, and potentially mixing, again, potentially intensely outside their household. So I think it does concern me as a potential event that can spread the virus. And again, if people have come from other places, we may or may not see an increase in cases that we can attribute to this event. As I've said with this group before, it can be very difficult to pinpoint spread to a mass gathering, even though we do ask about it.
I can hear you already, and it is a valid argument. But Dan, the protesters also gathering closely together, why don't you talk about them spreading the virus? Well, we have, and so far they haven't, or at least to the county health department, they haven't found any evidence that that's how this is spreading. Although we do keep asking, and they can only guess as to why really, whether it's because protesters are staying within their primary social circles, in those crowds of larger groups of people wearing a mask, or the fact that they're outdoors. Hopefully Saturday's gathering sees the same results of little to no spread. We will, of course, let you know. If you caught the story yesterday, you saw a report about psychic numbing. It's this psychological phenomenon where it's easier for humans to care about one thing a lot more than it is to care about a lot of things. It's kind of easy to understand when you think about it. The example being one COVID death is very tragic, but 160,000 COVID deaths quickly starts to just seem like a statistic. Producer Andrew Dorn is following up now on what it takes for us to overcome this and force ourselves to keep caring even when the numbers keep ticking up.
Psychic numbing is a psychological phenomenon that impacts the way we make decisions. Basically, we care a lot when one person suffers, but as problems get big, like coronavirus, which affects millions, we become desensitized. In fact, research suggests that as numbers in a tragedy get larger and larger, we actually care less and less.
We have a short phrase that sums up the results of our of our research, and that is the more who die, the less we care.
That's University of Oregon professor Paul Slovic, who has studied the way we make decisions for over 50 years.
When information comes to us in the form of numbers, statistics, it often doesn't convey any feelings in us. They're just numbers.
And that can be a problem, because our feelings are what drive us to take action, like wearing a mask or socially distancing. In fact, one of Slovic's studies found the feelings of compassion began to fade as soon as the number of people in need went from 1 to 2.
We have the strongest feeling of concern and desire to help when there's one person in distress. If there are 2 people in need, it probably won't feel twice as important to help them as one.
So twice the number of people does not mean we care twice as much. And when cases and numbers climb, we might choose not to help because we feel like it won't make a difference.
We think about all the people we're not helping, and that sends a bad feeling that dampens the good feeling we have about helping this person.
So how do we make that leap to overcome what might cause negative feelings and help? Professor Slovic says it's important to focus on the people behind the numbers.
It's the individual stories that kind of help us appreciate the reality of the situation, how people are experiencing it, how they're coping and dealing with it.
Even one picture can make a difference. Here's an example. By 2015, the Syrian civil war had displaced millions, though many around the world seemed not to care. But then one photo, which we won't show you because it's so disturbing, changed everything. It was of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi, who drowned when his family was trying to escape the war. Professor Slovic studied the global reaction to that one gut-wrenching photo, and the response was staggering. Within a week, donations for the Syrian relief effort skyrocketed.
It showed that the statistics which were there, which should have alarmed us and had us concerned, didn't because we were numb, but the picture woke us up.
It was something we felt and could understand. People were more willing to make that leap and help, even if only a little bit. And Professor Slovic reminds us, helping that little bit can be what it takes to save a life.
We say that even partial solutions can save whole lives, as a way to kind of get people not to be discouraged by the fact that they can't solve a problem completely.
KGW producer Andrew Dorn doing that story. Really fascinating. That was the second part. If you missed part 1, it's on our YouTube channel. You can check it out. Professor Slovic there says that psychic numbing, he believes, is a theory, is a product of our past. For most of human history, we only really had to worry about ourselves and very few people around us, so our brains are highly developed to care about smaller groups. But Professor Slovic hopes that simply by becoming aware of psychic numbing, we can change our tendency to turn our backs on some of the bigger problems. All right, we're going to finish the story right after this. We're going to talk about some of your questions and comments, so get that phone out, use the hashtag HeyDan, email us at thestory@kgw.com. Plus, I'm not sure when the last time you went to the Costco in Wilsonville was, but based on these pictures, things have taken a turn. We'll talk about it next. Keeping Wilsonville weird and under his eye at Costco. Listen, if you're trying to find a way to keep people from getting 6 feet or closer to you, you could do a lot worse. I don't mind this. Thanks to Julio for emailing the story at kgw.com with these photos. I hope they picked up some produce while they were there at Costco because, blessed be the fruit. If you see something keeping it weird out there, we want to see it too. Email us using the hashtag HeyDan. Send it our way. We might, pop it on air. May the Lord open. All right, let's read an email. Again, you have until 8 p.m. to drop your ballots off in Portland for the city council election. And I got this email from Ross and Debbie. Hey, Dan, yes, we did vote. And we have voted in every election since 1972. Even voted on the way home from the hospital, bringing home our first child in 1977. Where were you in 1977? Where was I? I don't know. That's a big question. That's deep, actually. I wasn't born until 81, so where was I? I thought psychic numbing was deep. I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll see you tomorrow on The Story. Use that hashtag HeyDan. Maybe I will tonight, let you know.